How's it going, chimps? My name is Monkai, and welcome to my son's room. Yeah, this is gonna be a little bit of a different video. Anyways, chimps. I'm just kidding. I can see. I got passed through on. Anyways, guys, today's gonna be a little bit of a different video. I wanted to go through and talk about things involving gun stocks in VR and virtual reality shooters in general. A lot of what is going to be shown today is going to be with Contractor's Expo Zone specifically. That's what I do content on. But the overall spectrum of Gunstock talk that I'm going to do today is not solely determined by Expo Zone. Everything that I'm going to talk about goes a broad spectrum on all VR shooters, whether I think you should use a Gunstock or whether I think you shouldn't use a Gunstock. So I have been asked a ton of times by you guys whether or not you should use a Gunstock. And to do my own opinion and kind of articulate my own reasoning for using one or not using one, I have spent at least over 100 hours with a Gunstock and then way more than a couple hundred hours without a Gunstock in all kinds of VR shooters. I will say that 90% of my hours with or without are on Contractor's Expo Zone. Remember, all these things that I put together are broad spectrum across all shooters, not just Expo Zone. So yeah, you guys saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you clicked on this video. I just want to talk really quickly about why I think you should or shouldn't use a Gunstock. So yeah, hopefully after today, I can help you figure out whether you want to go buy a Gunstock, a cheap one, expensive, make your own. People have so many different utilities at their disposal for Gunstocks. Today's video is just going to be helping you figure out whether or not you think it's worth it to buy one, or if you already have one, like me. I have gone back and forth with mine to try to figure out whether or not I really like it. And hopefully if you have one and you're kind of battling back and forth in your head, you know, trying it out, using it, and then going back to not freehand, hopefully I can help you make a decision on which one you want to fully commit to, because that's something that I struggled with. I didn't really know which one I wanted to fully commit to. But anyways, let's get straight into the video. So first, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons for both of them. I will put up a list of both pros for no Gunstock and then pros and cons for a Gunstock. And first of all, we're going to start on pros and cons for no Gunstock at all. So, no Gunstock. As you can see, let's pretend I didn't have the sun. I'm not going to take it off because I got wires, but it's behind me, it's not on me. No Gunstock. Let's start with the pros. The pros and cons that I put together for this list are what I believe to be the most major pros and cons, the things that have come to mind to me through playing the game, through thinking about using one and not using a Gunstock. And it's just like very basic, like most important pros, most important cons. If you have more ideas of pros and cons, let me know in the comments down below. I guarantee there's a couple hundred different pros or cons that I'm going to miss, so let me know in the comments. Anyways, very first pro to not using a Gunstock is speed. I think when everybody is deciding whether or not to get a Gunstock, they first think about the fact that without a Gunstock, you are so much faster. And I will demonstrate that really quickly in Contractor's Expo Zone. Okay, in the Contractor's Expo Zone shooting range, I have this M4 rifle. Again, this is going to be applicable to every VR shooter. I don't care what VR shooter you're playing. Without a Gunstock, you're always going to be faster naturally. And I'll go over when we get to Gunstocks. Don't worry, there's a lot more I could talk about with the speed. But with no Gunstocks, we're just going to have a physical Gunstock that we're using in-game. And when it comes to the debate between no Gunstock or a Gunstock, the physical Gunstock that most games have, you can just do whatever you want, whatever preference. That doesn't apply to this. But anyways, without a Gunstock, let's say I want to ready my weapon. Right there, you know? All I got to do is I got to reach for where my weapon is, get my other hand there, and I got to get it ready. I don't got to reach for a Gunstock. I don't got to reach for the points, the mounts. Every Gunstock is different, like I said. This applies to every Gunstock as well, not just every game. Any Gunstock that you have, some quicker than others, you're going to have to find those mounts. Without a Gunstock, I don't got to find any mounts. I just grab my gun, I just pull it up. It's very quick, very easy. And another thing that I've noticed, at least with my Gunstock, when I have a controller mount in the front and in the back, reloading, you have to undo the mount, grab a mag to reload, grab another mag, you know, do the reload, and then find that mount again. But with no Gunstock, just get that there and I'm there. I don't gotta find mounts, I don't gotta find anything, I'm just ready. Very quick, very fast. And in 90% of VR shooters, speed is everything, especially something like Contractor's Expo Zone or Tabor or any extraction shooter, any game with high kill time, or I guess low kill time, high damage. Anything with very low kill time, your speed is everything, because in a game where seconds kill, in a game where seconds get you killed, or literally less than seconds, every single millisecond counts. So being able to ready your weapon as fast as you possibly can is very, very important in extraction shooters, or just any VR shooter. Breachers, Tabor, Contractor's Exfil Zone, Pavlov, 90% of VR shooters you're going to want speed. So that is why I put speed at the top of the list for pros for the no Gunstock, because I think that's probably the biggest and most important thing that sets them both apart, at least for me and in my experience. So yeah, now let's move on to the next pro of not using a Gunstock, and that is just going to be ease of use. Basically, the point of this one is every single VR shooter that you're going to play, obviously you have to learn those VR shooters independently. Something like Contractor's Exfil Zone, obviously, it's a much more mechanical game. It's not like Breachers, where you just drop a mag and then fill it up and it automatically reloads it. You gotta actually, if you're empty, put the mag in, reload that round, and you know, like I said, different games have their specific learning curves and specific uses, but without using a Gunstock, you don't gotta learn where that points are, where the mounts are. You're not gonna become familiar with your guns hanging there if you have a holster. Some people have those Gunstock that's just sit on your hands or on the controllers. They stay there. You don't gotta figure out where to find that kind of stuff. With a no Gunstock, you're just there and you're ready to go at a moment's notice. And you're more focused on the game itself, not another Gunstock that you have to learn on top of the game that you're already playing. And then all the setups. So you don't gotta go through all the calibrations for no Gunstock. Obviously there are the physical Gunstocks that you can calibrate and all the different things inside those specific game settings, like with Contractor's Exfil Zone, for example. We have a virtual Gunstock type that you can change, different types, personal preference. But yeah, without a Gunstock, it's very quick, very easy to just pick up and play. You don't really need to think too hard about things. You're more focused on the game itself. So that is why I put ease of use at number 2 for Gunstocks. No Gunstock, that's what I mean. Now, moving on to the last pro that I have set up for this is something that I didn't realize until I got a Gunstock and then stopped using it, is no baggage. When you have a Gunstock in a game like Contractor's Exfil Zone or Into the Radius 1 or 2, any sort of looter shooter kind of VR game where you need to pull a backpack out from behind you, you got containers, you got stuff on your vest, you got to pull stuff out, you got this bouncing around. Now again, a lot of games or Gunstocks have they're very lightweight and they attach to your controllers, so they just go around with your controller. But even then, let's say I had another foot sticking out in front of my controller here, and I go to grab something off me, I'm gonna smack myself with it a couple times. I don't have one of those Gunstocks, so I can't always speak on how often you actually bump yourself into it, or how often it actually gets in the way. Like, let's say I had something on my chest rig and I went to grab it, how often it gets in the way. But I can say for a Gunstock that is sling mounted, one thing I did notice when I took the Gunstock off and stopped using it is I can turn, I can move a lot. Like right now, I gotta limit myself so I don't swing this thing around and throw it around like a racquetball. Like, I gotta be a little more careful with it. When you don't have a Gunstock, you can just do all you want without having to worry about something swinging around or smacking into something, or, you know, it just feels a little more free. So that's why I call it no baggage, because you have no extra stuffs hanging on, no extra stuffs on your controllers. You can whip them around. I don't care who you are, even if you have a very light thing attached to your controller. I like being very careful with my controllers, very careful and safe with them. If I have even a very, very lightweight Gunstock sticking a foot out, I'm not going to be swinging that thing around trying to jolt it. I wouldn't want to break the Gunstock, I wouldn't want to break my controller. So no baggage means freedom, and freedom to do whatever I want in VR, because that is kind of how fast-paced VR can be. You know what I'm saying? Gotta be fast, gotta be quick, and this baggage can't get in the way. So yeah, that is my top 3 pros to not using a Gunstock. Again, I'm sure, I guarantee that there's a bunch of you who can come up with a bunch of different pros for not using a Gunstock. Let me know in the comments down below. I would absolutely love to hear it, and I'll pin some comments that I like and some opinions that I agree with. And opinions that I don't agree with, I'm deleting every single one of them. And you guys can just take your terrible opinions out of my comment section, so don't even bother. They're gonna get deleted. obviously, if you know anything about me. I delete a lot of comments that I don't like. Anyway, let's move on to the cons. Okay, the first con to not using a gunstock is unsteady. Now, I've titled it unsteady because, obviously, if you train long enough, if you play long enough, you can become very steady at long-range combat. I've seen a lot of people who play without gunstocks. They are extremely steady aimed. They have very good aiming. They're very steady. I don't really know how else to put it. But for me, a normal human being who is not a professional, I can be pretty steady from pretty decently close range, but very, very far out. You can see him holding my dot on that dummy's head pretty well, but I'm bouncing around, and that dummy is pretty close. Move that dummy out a couple 100 meters, and my dot is going to be going way off target by a lot more than what I'm doing right now. Okay, I'll stop so I can actually have a conversation. Anyway, I am decently steady, and I've found a way that I can hold my arms out that keeps me like far and close to where I feel like I can have a good aim, but also not too far where my arm gets too tired over time, where I start to really lose that stability, but also not too close where my aim is all kinds of jacked up. Just at a good spot. But for me personally, because I'm a normal human being and I don't work out as much as I should, it's his fault. It's that guy's fault. Just want to let you know that. I'm kidding. It's not his fault. It's my fault. Anyway, over time, even if I play like 4 hours, I'm going to get unsteady. I'm going to get weak. My arms are going to shake a little bit. And in a game like Contractor's Exfil Zone, my heart gets pumping. I get adrenaline. The game is so awesome at getting you psyched up and hyped. And I get shaky. It is a lot harder to stay steady when you're free-handed. You got nothing mounted to that left arm who's aiming. So I will put that as a con for no gunstock. Although there are so many people who, with training, can turn that into, I wouldn't say a pro, but not a con. So personally, I think it's a con. On to the next con of not using a gunstock. I'm going to put that as inconsistent. I'm going to say that one con of not using a gunstock is inconsistency because, again, someone who is a normal human being, who isn't a complete professional, who takes this as real life or death, I become a little inconsistent. Like I was saying, with where I put my arms, my right arm is almost in the exact same spot every single time. I mean, I brace that up against my body and it's at the same exact angle every single time. That one's not a problem. The other problem that I have is my left arm. Like I said, some people like having their arms way out, and that helps them with aim. Some people like having their arms in close. I go somewhere in the middle, but even then, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, I'm sometimes out, I'm sometimes in, I'm in and out. You're adding another variable when you don't have a gunstock. You're adding that, putting your arm further out at whatever X or Y axis that would be. Know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Anyways, because you got that left and right to aim, but it just adds that extra little bit. With a gunstock, you're mounted. You're in the same exact spot every single time. I'll get more on that. But without a gunstock, it is a lot easier to be inconsistent in where you put your arm, and I do think that matters. Some people treat this like sensitivity. The further out you are, the less sensitivity, I would say. And then the closer you are, the more sensitivity. Yeah, that would make more sense. When you're really far out, let me demonstrate this. When you're really, really close, subtle and small movements are going to move that reticle very, very much. A lot more than if I pull my arm way far out. Little movements aren't going to move it nearly as much. Think about it as a pivoting point. Your weapon is pivoting off your first hand. The closer you are to that pivoting point, the more leverage or the less leverage you have on that point, the more it's gonna just totally bounce around. The further you are, the more leverage, more steady you can be. So, but again, that comes with the draw of your arm getting tired over time. So yeah, that is another con, in my opinion, is the consistency. I find for myself, being consistent is the best way that I can help myself to be good at any VR game, any game in general. The best way to be good at a game is to be good at it all the time. If you keep your arms in the exact same spot, if you're aiming the exact same way every single time, you're going to be consistent. You'll grow a lot better because you're going to have less variables against you. the last con for using or not using a gun stock is 0 cool points. I mean, come on. This has got to be like the most important reason to use a gun stock. Because when I'm not using a gun stock, look at the idiot I look like when I'm aiming. Yeah, I bet you I look real intimidating right now, don't I? Walking around, waving my stupid, mindless arms like an idiot. Yeah. Anyway, I kind of feel like when I'm playing VR, I look like an idiot while playing. It honestly, if we're gonna get right down to it, is really not the most important thing. But I feel stupid sometimes, not all the time. Not always so worried about that when I'm playing VR, when I'm getting immersed into a shooter like Exfil or Breachers even. Not really the first thing I'm worried about, obviously. But it's not always about how you look. It's about how you feel sometimes. And I never realized how I felt and how it can kind of, honestly, and it sounds kind of stupid, but how it can actually affect how I play is when I'm using a gun stock, I actually feel like I'm holding something, like I'm actually doing something with a gun. I'm not just holding my arms and waving them around. So I'm going to put that at the lower end of the cons list because, I mean, again, it's not as important, especially when you're looking for results over other things. We'll get more into that when I talk about gun stocks. But yeah, 0 cool points because, I mean, I know how I look when I'm playing VR. I know I'm skinny too. I'm kind of hunchbacked, got my scrawny arms pointing out there like an idiot. Anyways, so that's no gun stocks, pros and cons. Again, let me know pros and cons you think I missed or you think are really important that I missed. Because again, remember these are all the important pros and cons, leaving out some of the lesser important cons and pros. These are also a broad spectrum to every VR game, every VR shooter, not just Exfil or an extraction shooter. These apply to any extraction or any shooter game that you can think of. So yeah, anyways, now let's talk about the gun stock. Now, I should say, before I get started on this, that I have the Wheeled VR 1 stock. This gun stock, I have had another one. I had a OLED VR gun stock for my PlayStation 2 VR, and that gun stock was alright. I did have a couple things about that gun stock, but that is not about this video. This is my gun stock. This gun stock is absolutely phenomenal. I use it with my Quest 3S. I have used it with my PSVR 2. Works amazing for both. Extremely customizable, extremely adjustable. I have it set up perfectly to where I like it. I've got my front hand pretty close to my butt stock here, and then my front hand is actually also very close, but I like it right there. It for just about every single gun that I use in all my VR games, this works perfect. Obviously with the 1 stock, I can flip this and extend that out or in and make adjustments where I see fit. Sometimes I like pushing it out a little bit more, but yeah. Anyways, let's get into the pros and cons of using a gun stock. So remember, these pros and cons apply to every gun stock, not just the 1 stock by Wheeled VR. This applies to absolutely every gun stock. I made sure to keep these pretty vague because I know there are so many different types of gun stocks. I know they all work very different and can all be affected in different ways. So I wanted to keep it pretty vague so that we can hit all of them all at once and keep it all on the same basis. So very first pro for the gun stock is you are extremely steady with a gun stock. Let me explain further on this. So without a gun stock, I talked about one of the cons being unsteady and how you can train to the point where you have very, very steady aim. And I still stand by that. But I will say, I don't care who you are. If you train all day and night, I'm sure you could be just as steady as a gun stock. But I guarantee you, an extremely small percentage of people on this planet will be able to get as steady as a gun stock. Because having your front arm mounted, your back arm, having your right hand and your left hand both mounted to each other, and then both of those mounted to your shoulder all in one connection, I seriously cannot get any steadier than this. Like, just holding your shot on a spot and hitting those tiny, tiny pixel shots. I've noticed that if somebody's hiding around a corner, let's say I'm trying to shoot somebody behind those boxes, I can hold my dot. I mean, I'm talking right now, so I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit more than usual. I can hold my dot on that slit if somebody's head was there. So much better. And you also got to remember, I'm coming back from not using a gunstock for a very long time. When I'm hyped up and I got all the adrenaline going and I've got really good gear on me and somebody's out there, I'm bouncing around like a freaking beach ball at a Nickelback concert. But I tell you what, I pull out that gunstock, dude. No training, just boom. So smooth and steady. One thing I will also talk about is you have a weapon smooth setting in almost every VR game. If you don't know what weapon smoothing is, I'll show you really quickly. If I have weapon smoothing put to 10, look at how slow my gun went up. Watch, I am aiming in between those boxes. Look at how easy it is to hold it on that spot. I'm practically in that spot the entire time. That tiny slit. Now let's see how fast it is to move from target to target. Boom. Waiting. Waiting. Ah, I'm out of ammo. Bang. 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 See that delay, how slow that is? So basically what weapon smoothing does, at least what it feels like it does, is it adds a delay to your movements to what is actually registered so that you can have that smooth aim. Now let's say I have weapon smoothing turned all the way down. Bang, 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 bang. Much less delay, much less smoothing. So weapon smoothing works hand in hand with both a gunstock and no gunstocks. So when it comes to the whole steady, unsteady argument, I will argue and die on the hill that gunstocks are always more steady than no gunstock, because it is just extremely hard to beat and compete with being able to have your hands both mounted to something. Just having your arms mounted. You're creating much less variable in movement. Like without a gunstock, you have two variables, obviously. You have your right arm moving and your left arm moving. I guess three, technically, your body. You got three variables all moving against each other. When you have a gunstock, you have all three of those variables attached to one physical object. So in order to move my right hand and make it wobbly, I've already got to go through moving my right hand and my shoulder. So I've got those other two things steadying that left hand. The right hand is being steadied by the other hand and the shoulder. Shoulder's being steadied or helping steady those other two limbs. And the other nice thing is this one has a cheek pad. Super nice. So yeah, gunstocks are extremely helpful in the steady department. I think I've made that case. So let's move on to the next pro for gunstocks, and that is consistency. I kind of touched on this before with no gunstocks being inconsistent, and that is basically just what I meant before. Is with a gunstock, I am at the exact same points every single time. My left hand is at the exact same distance between my right hand every single time. They are both also the exact same distance between my shoulder every single time. So I am removing those inconsistency variables, the subtle changes in where my hands are placed. I'm removing those variables, making it so that they are the same every single time. So I am consistent, and I'm working on other things like my actual aim in game rather than making sure that I'm keeping my arms at the same place. Now there are so many people who don't use a gunstock who have the muscle memory to get to the exact same spot, or where a little bit of movement doesn't affect them that much. But I find for me, it helps every once in a while. I'll notice while I'm playing without a gunstock that I tend to drift one way or the other, or I'll just kind of think about it where I'm like, I want to try going far out and see how that feels. I want to try, I usually don't come very close. I'll usually stick my arm out, but with a gunstock, it helps me stay very consistent, very steady every single time. And I find that reflects in my gameplay on an extraction shooter or breachers or any sort of VR shooter. So that is one very important factor I think a lot of people look over is consistency. If you look at sports or anything competitive or anything really ever, consistency is arguably the most important factor for success. So I know it's like just a video game, but I intend to actually be good at this video game. I don't try to jump on and get murdered all day, every day. Happens a lot. But that's never my intention, so trying. Now the last pro that I have written down for using a gunstock is the immersion. Like I was talking about before, something about like actually holding a gun, and with this gunstock in particular, it feels like an actual weapon. And when I'm aiming in the game, you're not thinking about the fact that you're holding a couple pipes with mounts and a little skeleton stock. When you're actually playing your game, you're thinking about actually holding the weapon that you're using in that game. And for me, I find that a gun stock really does help that immersion effect, and it helps me just kind of put myself into a different mindset while I'm playing a shooter. It helps me feel more immersed. I don't really have any other way of putting it. I basically just feel more in the game. I feel more in the situation, more that I'm actually somebody using a firearm and killing people. Anyway, I think that actually makes me play a lot better when I'm using a gun stock. It makes me think a lot differently. And again, it might be something that doesn't affect you or something you disagree with, but it really helps me. So maybe give it a try. Maybe think about it a little more. Maybe use your brain. You know what I'm saying? That's basically what I'm trying to say this whole time. Just use your brain. Don't be stupid, because I think you're stupid. Now let's talk about the cons of using a gun stock. Now, obviously, with the pro of not using a gun stock being speed, one of the cons for using a gun stock is slow. You're a lot slower when you're using a gun stock. So, like I was explaining, this is even something that I'm just showing, just trying to grab my gun. Usually what I do is I grab my gun first. Usually what I'll do is I'll grab my gun in-game first, and then I'll put my hand on my mount. And then I'll bring my other hand to my mount, and then I'll grab the weapon with that other hand. Or usually I'll grab the weapon first and then find that mount. But there you go. Just think about all those steps that I had to take, where if I didn't have a gun stock, I'm just grab gun and grab gun. You know what I mean? But with a gun stock, I gotta grab either my mount first or my gun first, grab the gun, grab the mount. You have 4 separate things that you're grabbing, 2 in VR, 2 in reality, and that adds milliseconds in a game where literally milliseconds kill. That is very important. In a game where, say I'm that dummy right there and I'm reloading, somebody decides they want to come around the corner. Now I'm grabbing my gun, I'm grabbing my mount, and boom, I'm dead already. When I reloaded the shooting range, it got rid of my magazine. Anyway, you get the point. I have actually died a couple times when getting a gun stock and figuring out how fast it takes me to grab my gun and my gun stock and get completely ready. It's gotten me killed a couple times, and it's really frustrating. Especially in a game where deaths mean a lot because you lose all your gear. But it's something like Breachers even. Let's say you're doing a match and you're the last person alive and you lose a round because you're busy getting your gun stock ready. Now, in something like Breachers, you don't have a lot of time where you're putting your gun stock down. You don't have a lot of time where you're putting it away. You're probably going to be holding that gun stock basically the entire match. But in something like Into the Radius, Contractors, Tarkov, any VR game or shooter that involves you putting that gun stock down for a second to access things or mess around with stuff, you gotta get that back out, get it ready, and it takes time. It's not as fast as not using one, but you can. Again, with the unsteady, no gun stocks, learning how to become very steady and kind of smudging that con. You can also smudge the con of taking time to get your gun stock by training to be really, really fast. After having a gun stock and putting some hours on with it, I can pretty quickly get my gun stock ready. I mean, again, it's something that I gotta get a lot better at, but in the moment I found that I have a pretty good time getting myself ready. And another thing that I have found helps me a ton is while I'm playing something like Contractors, I will usually, if I know danger's around, I mean, this is something you should just do with every extraction shooter, any shooter in general, is focus on the threat before anything else. So I won't even put my gun down until I know the threat's gone. So I don't have to worry about readying my gun or anything. The only other part or variable of being slow is reloading. I just have to take my gun off the mount. With the wheeled VR, it makes it so nice. I don't really even have to grab anything. I just have my grip button. I can hold that. As you can see, I'm holding my grip button. I'm holding my gun in the game. And then I have my ring finger and pinky ready to grab the stock. Can you tell I'm looking through my nose hole? I'm using my ring and pinky finger to grab the stock, and I can keep my hands on the grips. So nice thing about this stock. Not sponsored, wheeled if you want. I'm right here. Anyways, I don't have to let go of the controller to grab that. So I'm right there and ready to go with reloading. It's just pretty simple. So yeah, anyways, what I was saying, speed, you can get a lot faster over time. Learn how to be a lot quicker with that. But again, in a lot of situations, let's say I know somebody's coming or on their way over, you got to give yourself a little extra time knowing that it's going to take yourself a couple extra seconds or milliseconds to get yourself ready for that gunfight because you have a gun stock. So it's something you learn to do second nature as you're playing VR with the gun stock, is you learn to give yourself that extra couple seconds. But sometimes I've had a situation where somebody jumped me, I didn't have any time to think, and I just grabbed my gun without the gun stock. And as you can see in game, with the physical gun stock, I don't know if you guys can tell, it feels very janky with the physical gun stock, but not holding it, it feels very weird. But yeah, it can work. And if you practice enough, you can turn that con into a little bit less of a con. I don't think you're ever going to completely get rid of it. I don't think, or I know that somebody who plays without a gun stock is always going to be faster, but you're always going to be more steady and consistent. So pros and cons, weigh them. Anyways, that kind of blends in with the next con of using a gun stock, and that is that it takes time. Gun stocks are something that you can practice all you want, that you can just pick up, and it'll just take time to get used to. You have to get the setup for the calibration. It can be annoying in certain games, in Contractor's Expo Zone. If you want to know how to calibrate your gun stock, you have to go into the Battle Royale version of the game. If you calibrate all those weapons in that, it'll be pretty much perfect for Expo Zone. It works great for me. And once you do get everything calibrated, it takes some time to get used to, when you're playing VR, finding that mount. I have my gun stock set up in a way that it stays out of the way when I'm doing things. I actually kind of need to tighten it a little more, but my grip is right where I need it. I've gotten to the point where I can feel where it's hanging. I know exactly the distance I need to go to find it. And then I've also gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at finding that front one. I will say in the heat of the moment, I do get pretty freaked out, and sometimes I'm spazzing and it takes me a second longer to find it. But again, that comes with practice, that comes with time, that comes with using the gun stock over and over again. Anyways, yeah, it takes time to learn. I kind of went over that with speed and some other things. I think that's kind of something that everybody knows, getting a gun stock. But yeah, I think that kind of shows the pros and the cons of both using a gun stock, not using a gun stock. I hope this helps. I have a final opinion. If you have any more pros or any cons, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to go through them and hear what you guys think. I hope this makes sense to you guys, where it's encompassing to all gun stocks and all VR shooters. And I will say my final thoughts. I think that using a gun stock completely outweighs the cons of not using a gun stock, because the pros of not using a gun stock being speed. I think that with a gun stock, obviously, in moments where you get completely jumped out of nowhere, you can train all you want, you're not going to be as fast as somebody without a gun stock. They're always going to be faster. Even if you've practiced and you know exactly where all your mounts are, you could be pretty quick. So I think that pro or con of using a gun stock can be smudged and a little bit taken off the con list by just completely working on being fast. So I think that is another reason why I would like using a gun stock, because I can make up for that. And then you obviously can learn how to use it. Consistency and steadiness of the gun stock very much outweigh the downsides of taking time to learn and time to get ready, because you can just give yourself extra time, be smarter in certain situations, and that'll help you a big time with the slow aspect of a gun stock. And then the baggage, at least I personally don't mind, because the immersion, I feel like, completely helps me with that one. I kind of really like the aspect of just having a physical gun and getting used to having a firearm hang from your sling. Obviously, I'm not like trying to practice for anything or do anything crazy, but it just feels cool. It feels nice having something like that, and that's a part of VR. I mean, when I play VR over flat screen, I could just go play Tarkov if I want to play an extraction shooter. But I love the immersion. I love that I'm in the world, and having a gun stock that's holding an actual firearm, helping me feel a little bit more like that, is amazing. That's the entire reason why I even got into VR, was the immersion aspect of it. My first game that really blew my mind with VR and immersions was Resident Evil Village. I did an entire playthrough series on that game. If you want to check that out, I'll put a flag to the first video in that playthrough. And that immersion side of playing a flat screen game that I love in VR was just amazing. So with a gun stock, I wanted to get it because I thought it would help me with aim, but also it just feels so cool and it feels so awesome and it feels great to use and to actually feel like I'm aiming something. So yeah, I personally will be using a Gunstock. I get questions all the time, and every single time I've answered that question, I promise I'm not lying. When I say no, I'm not using a Gunstock, that's because at the moment I've been putting hours in without one, so I could see and feel and make this exact video. I want this video to have a very weighted opinion. I want to be able to give you guys a good one because I have experience with both not using one and using one. And like I said, when I did say that I was using one, it's because at the time I was practicing and I was getting familiar with it. So I will from here on out probably be using a Gunstock. There's a chance I change because like I said, there's pros and cons to both of them. Think about the things I've gone over in this video about what makes most sense to you. I know that something like the wheeled VR Gunstock is very expensive, very premium for the price, I will not lie. 100 and something, like $70 after shipping and stuff. That is extremely expensive for a Gunstock, and for me, someone who's really passionate about VR, it wasn't too bad. My wallet said otherwise, my bank account said otherwise, but the fun said so. You know what I'm saying? There are plenty of cheap options out there for Gunstocks, and there are so many tutorials on how to make your own DIY Gunstocks and print your own if you have a 3D printer. Check out a couple videos. I'm gonna be honest, I don't have the best help for your own virtual Gunstocks or VR Gunstocks, that's what I mean. I'm not gonna be the best help for those DIY people, but there are tons of videos online, and if you are looking for a Gunstock, highly recommend the wheeled VR. Feels phenomenal, feels great, easy to use. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you guys to those of you who watch my channel all the time. Thanks for sticking through this video. I know this might not be exactly up my Exfil Zone alley. Don't worry guys, I have some videos planned for Exfil Zone. I just wanted to do this video because I've been asked a lot, and I've had this video actually on my mind for a very long time. Probably a couple months. I've been wanting to do a Gunstock video for a while because you guys have been asking me a ton. Anyways, take care of yourselves. Make sure to take care of your family and love on your family. And as always, you guys are awesome.